How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here from Wrestling Observer Live. And Dave has pulled a Bob Sapp. He is currently missing. We don't know where he is, but hopefully he'll be here because today's a big day. It's going to be the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame edition of this show, the first of two shows. We're going to have Mike Tenay and Larry Madison on, and we're basically going to go over the complete list of inductees into the Hall of Fame this year, everybody's favorite Hall of Fame, and go over the merits of each, who we believe should be in, who we believe should not be in, and that'll be that. And since last year when we tried this, we didn't quite make all the way through the list in one show. We're going to do two shows, so next week we'll be doing it as well. And since Dave's not here and we don't have any guests on the line yet, we're going to go down the performers list very quickly. These are the guys we're going to be discussing the next 2 weeks as individuals who should or should not be inducted into the Hall of Fame. They are Jun Akiyama, Arn Anderson, Gene and Ole Anderson, Kurt Angle, Atlantis, Bob Backlund, Red Bastien, Masa Chono, Carlos Colon, Ultimo Dragon, the Fabulous Freebirds, being Terry Gordy, Michael Hayes, and Buddy Roberts, John Fry, Masa Funaki, Pep Gomez, Black Gordman, and Great Goliath, Eddie Guerrero, Triple H, Gran Hamada, Volkan, Owen Hart, Hiroshi Hase, Kurt Hennig, Ivan Koloff, Aja Kong, the Midnight Express of Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, and Stan Lane, Bill Miller, Fabulous Don Morocco, Dick Murdoch, Blue Panther, L.A. Park, who was the original La Parka, not the AAA version that's currently working right now, Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, Seiji Sakaguchi, Kazushi Sakuraba, Great Sasuke, Mike and Ben Sharp, Jimmy Snuka, Wilbur Snyder, Sting, Kiyoshi Tamura, John Tolos, Undertaker, Viano 3, Dr. Wagner Jr., Johnny Walker, and Tim Woods. And then, of course, there's the non-performers list, which includes Paul Heyman, Jerry Jarrett, Gorilla Monsoon, Don Owen, Roy Shire, and Jesse Ventura. And I believe we're also, at some point, going to have Conan on, who's going to be talking about the Lucha performers on this list. And I'm not sure if that's going to be this week or next week. So,
Mike Tenay and Larry Madison are here as well. So, you guys on board?
I'm here.
So, how's it going?
It's going great, Dave. How's everything?
It's pretty good. How's it going, Larry?
Doing all right. Everything's doing fine. Book's going well. I have a DVD deal with High Spots, so everything's going fine.
Good. And Bryan, what's any release date for your book?
No, not yet. I just was now told before Christmas, so whatever that means.
Okay, so we got that going. Of course, today is Hall of Fame Day, and we got Bryan already ran down a list of all of the candidates that we'll be talking about. We're not going to rush through it like we did last year. We're going to talk about probably half or so this week and the other half next week, most likely. So that's kind of like the plan. So we'll have some probably good in-depth discussion. Before we start, just real quick, of course, tomorrow night, 60-minute match, Triple H, Chris Benoit. It should be quite an interesting match. Larry, your thoughts on a 60-minute match on live television? There hasn't been a 60-minute match on live television since never.
I think you hit it very good in the Wrestling Observer this week. They made a very good point. I just kind of hesitate a little bit. It's going to be a 60-minute match.
We already know.
Yeah, so we'll come in at 55 minutes and we'll see what the finish is. We'll see who they run in, or we'll see what they do at the finish.
I know, and they're going to run in. They're going to run everybody in at the end, too.
Yeah, I like the drama of, we don't know if it's 2 out of 3 or it's one fall or something. I think that does add a 60-minute match. It had its place, and I'm not altogether sure. Maybe it would belong better in a pay-per-view type setting or something like that, where maybe you weren't anticipating all the run-ins at the end. It'll be a tremendous test. I'm sure they're going to break their backs literally, try to make it a great match, because they know that Ric Flair and other people are going to be watching. But I kind of agree with you. To me, it just takes a little bit of the edge off it, knowing it's going to go 60.
You know, Mike,
I think there's one thing I hate more than anything, and I've said this for 20 years. I'm going to say it for the next 20 years if I last that long. Golly, I hate going to commercial right in the middle of a match. They go to commercial in the middle of
there's
inning.
There's no avoiding it.
There's no way to get around it.
Yeah, I mean the way things are structured, where you don't. I mean, it's a funny thing, because if you look back at the very first Clash of the Champions, which was in 1988, and they did a 45-minute draw with Ric Flair and Sting, they did a big commercial break after the ring introduction, so before the bell rang. Mm-hmm. And then they went there 45 minutes, and then they took another commercial break, so they had no commercials in between. And I think that's one of the reasons why that match, was remembered.
That's why people remember it so well, because, golly, it was the entire 45. Even with, they called a rest hold, they can call whatever they want. Bottom line is, it was all there for you to see.
And the other thing also is they didn't tell you ahead of time this was a 45-minute match.
Not at all. It was surprising. It was dramatic.
Yeah. Whereas, the only, I guess one that would be close to this, of course, last year everyone remembers the Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle 60-minute Iron Man match, which had a lot of commercial breaks in the middle of it. And the ratings pattern, I mean, people were interested in the match, even though the overall rating of the show wasn't that good. But, you really saw 1 million people, actually 983,000 people tuned in 15 minutes to go. They knew when the finish was, and why worry about the first 45 minutes? Because and I expect that the rating pattern will be similar tomorrow.
Is it definite at this point exactly when the match is starting?
Yeah, I think they announced that they're going to open the show with it, didn't they?
They said top of the hour, so I'm assuming that they're opening the show with it, yeah.
Now, why wouldn't you, rather than follow the same pattern of the mistake that you made last year with Angle and Lesnar, why wouldn't you just have those guys come out, say at the top of the second hour, and not telegraph the fact that it's going to be the 60-minute match, and then allow the drama of the match to unfold? You'd have plenty of time if you started at the top of hour number 2. You'd have plenty of time for the 60-minute match to get in and anything else that you want to do post-match.
You know what else? I think that you're right. I think they should start it at 9. And then the other part of that, too, is that I would announce, like this coming up on the show, and then just never get to it.
Could it be a little bit?
Because don't you think that gives it more of a realistic feel?
Of course.
What's
wrong with doing that, too, especially when you're giving them the payoff of the 60-minute match? At that point, it's not like the blatant false advertising.
Yeah, and who's going to complain at that point?
Nobody.
The one thing about this match, okay, which if you're saying we're starting at 9 o'clock and we're going to go the whole hour, because of the way the rating pattern works, it's going to make the match look real good. Because people, unlike in the second hour where people have already tuned in and they start fading out and then they come back for the finish, which is the usual, Raw pattern. The first hour, people really, they're tuning. The people who are tuning out are offset by more people tuning in. So.
And I don't think by starting it at 9 o'clock that it really would give it away in advance, because I think I've seen several times in the last few months where they actually have started a main event almost to kick off hour number 2.
Yeah, they start up a lot of main events at night.
This really is the time to follow that pattern again and then just go through with a 60-minute time limit draw.
Okay, but you know what this all is? You got to remember that you have all been thinking more about it than they did, because they're just thinking. I don't even think they're thinking. I think this is Triple H just. I'm doing a 60-minute match because I'm working with Chris Benoit, who's the best guy in the company. And, I'm out there to impress Ric Flair. And I'm out there to impress the other wrestlers.
Establish a legend.
A 60-minute match on live television, which nobody's done. And I think that's... And if they have a great match, he'll do that.
Since Hunter's on such a long match kick, what if they did a deal where they went an hour and it was like tied 5-5, and Hunter was about to get the pin and the time limit expired, so he kind of had one of those, he won but he didn't. And then it was ruled they had to go even longer, like they'd have to come out later, like 15 minutes before the end of the show.
Well, they wouldn't break them up. They would just keep it going like they did with the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels.
Well, I think this would give them a chance to, give them a rest or whatever. But anyway, the second time through, then you can have Eugene interfere and set up SummerSlam and everything like that, and Hunter gets his win or whatever in the first part of it. But
post-match interference is really always that risk that you run. In really upsetting your audience once you've had them, sit through that 60-minute match. So we'll see how it's handled.
Yep.
We're worried about their booking for them. Isn't it?
Yeah.
We always are.
Well,
we'll kick it off with something that will cause people to blow gaskets. So I'm going to say Triple H.
Why?
Because I know that the whole point of the ballot is not to pick somebody because of a short 2-year run or whatever, but when he was the top heel in the company, and he was in all the main events and everything like that, they made more money in 1 year than they had ever made in history. And he was a top heel throughout all of the hot period, and I think that counts for way more than enough to get him into the Hall of Fame.
Okay, we'll go next to Larry.
Well, I'll complicate it because my two strongest, and I'll also stir them up, Bryan, don't feel bad. I'll say it should be either Bob Backlund or The Undertaker. Backlund simply because it's not his fault when he was champion. He did what he could do. He was an excellent champion. He drew a lot of money. And Dave and I talked about this once, too. They say the shows were loaded. I fail to have seen any pay-per-view shows that were not loaded. Promoters don't not load shows trying to not make money. So it's kind of hard to say who did it. So my feeling would be Backlund, possibly Undertaker, and we can get into that a little bit later where I've kind of turned around on Mark Calloway. But my other feeling would be, and again, kind of in a Johnny-come-lately world, I'd say that I think the two strongest candidates would be Triple H or Kurt Angle.
Okay, Mike.
Well, that's interesting because I narrowed it down to The Undertaker or Kurt Angle.
Really? You got Kurt Angle that high?
Good. This is great.
You got Kurt Angle that high? Really?
I have Kurt Angle that high. that really was my final choices, and I'm going to go with The Undertaker just because I thought that he was such a strong choice last year, came so close, but it was very difficult. I'll take Undertaker slightly over Angle.
Okay, well, none of you picked my choice. My choice is Kazushi Sakuraba. I actually overanalyzed, which of course you're not supposed to do because that leads to faulty conclusions. But when I did, and I tried to give points for work rate, for drawing power, for historical significance and longevity, and he blew away the field. There was nobody close when I put all that up because what he did work rate wise, pretty much incredible. Drawing power, as good as anyone on the list, probably the best of anyone on the list realistically. And then historical significance, I mean, Pride would not even exist today if it was not for him, and now it's thriving. And it will probably outlast him, but it was a dying company, built on Nobuhiko Takada's back. And I mean, Triple H, Undertaker, none of those guys made the difference between success and failure in the long term of WWE. Steve Austin may have, but he's not on the ballot this year. And the only one, where he's not strong on is longevity, but a shooter isn't going to have 20 years. He's not going to have 20 years. That ain't going to happen. So, anyway, that's my pick.
Lucky to have two.
Tough to argue with Sakuraba's drawing power.
Yeah. So, anyway, well, now that we've got those out of the way, let's start with Jun Akiyama. Bryan, your thoughts on him?
I wasn't watching a lot of Japanese wrestling during the period where I think he was at his peak, but from what I've seen of him and what I know of him, I don't really see him as a Hall of Fame guy.
Okay. Mike?
I'm going to say, lots of good matches in the past decade. Think about teaming with and a rivalry with Kenta Kobashi, but for me, just not enough. So I'm going to say no to Jun Akiyama.
Larry?
I'd also have to say no. I almost have this sense of Akiyama that potential not quite realized. I think people expected a little bit more out of him. Terrific performer, but no, not there.
Mike's getting a lot more exposure in the last month or so. They're finally getting a chance to see, everyone's getting, I don't say everyone, but a lot more people are getting a chance to see your announcing, and they're getting a chance to see a lot of the wrestlers that we've talked about that the people who didn't buy the pay-per-views didn't see. I mean, the one thing with TNA is you've introduced a lot of young characters, and I mean, the one thing, when it comes to year-end awards, the one, I think there's a lot of people that are going to be candidates, I think, coming off of the show, and one of them that I've heard more than once is Move of the Year, the Canadian Destroyer, by P.D. Williams, which nobody would have seen on television until, the last couple of weeks, right, Mike?
Yeah, just another important aspect of having the show every week on Fox Sports Net is that exposure, and maybe the most important aspect of the show, and I think we've done a pretty good job so far with 8 Impact shows in the book, and I think we've got a pretty good batting average for those shows on Friday afternoon, and I hope that continues and continues to springboard a lot of people to watching the pay-per-view as well on Wednesday night. It looks like we've got a good one this Wednesday with the Ultimate X.
Yeah, and a tremendous cage match last Wednesday night, I thought.
I thought it was the best match that we've had in many, many months. Very great. I think maybe even a surprising finish to that with the Naturals prevailing over AMW and the 6 Sides of Steel. And I think we're going to come back this Wednesday with another real deep show and hope we continue the streak.
All right.
I like the play-by-play announcer best.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I didn't have a chance to talk about Jun Akiyama. To me is a real interesting one because he's been in. To me, I've probably seen him in more great matches than all but very few wrestlers that I've seen in my life. And part of it is because he's worked night after night with so many green. He's in there with Kenta Kobashi and Misawa at different times. Kawada, a lot of the top Americans when they were going over there. And there's something, I don't know exactly what it is. I see him as someone who was not quite there. I wouldn't close the book on him. I mean, I couldn't vote for him and didn't vote for him this year. But boy, I have seen him, and last week not last week, but the 10th was just another one. I mean, unbelievable match. I mean, for match quality, he should be in there, but I think that I don't know if he's helped by the fact of the people he's worked with or hurt by the fact that as good as he is, he'll never be as good as Kenta Kobashi and some of those, and Misawa.
That's really the key to a lot of people, I think, whether they're the complimentary part of the match or whether they're the person that gets overshadowed because of it.
Yeah, I think he's both, if that's actually possible.
You made a very good point, though, Dave, that he's not the guy, though. He's still not quite the guy. He's good.
And I don't think he ever will be.
But I agree with you. I mean, let's see. Things could evolve over the next. How old is he now exactly?
35.
Touch and go.
Yeah, and then this be I think he started in '92, so we're talking about 12 years in.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
And physical style.
Just missing.
Physical style, and the other thing too is, as good as Noah looks like it's doing right now, the bottom line is the future of that company. I don't know how strong it is because really, the guy who's carrying it is Kobashi, and I mean, as great as
All Japan just changed names.
Yeah, oh, it is. But I mean, as great as Ken Kobashi is, I mean, the problem with Ken Kobashi is you're not going to get a lot more longevity out of him, I don't think.
Yeah, the clock is ticking with every match.
Yeah. We'll go to Arn Anderson. Brian, we'll start with you.
I think Arn was a really good wrestler, and he was a really good talker. And I almost feel bad because I think that, WCW at the end and near the end was so incompetent that there's so much they could have done with him that they didn't do, just as far as talking. And same thing with WWE, but I never saw him as a guy who was like a real Hall of Famer.
Larry.
I have basically the same feeling. Good, solid performer, a lot of different abilities. But by the same token, I could never see him headlining the big one. And that to me, is the key of being in the Hall of Fame. You got to be able to headline the big one.
Mike.
Ton of respect for a guy whose work is so solid, terrific on the microphone, tag team with Tully, and really his stint with the Four Horsemen. He was certainly one of the mainstays there, an important cog in the machine. But to me, he was never the driving force. So I'm going to say no.
Yeah, well, I agree. I just don't see him. There's a certain thing. When it comes to being a Hall of Famer, I don't know how to exactly describe it. But having been all over the world and seen the different wrestlers that are in there, at different times, work-wise, he's pretty close. Interview-wise, one of the best ever. But I never felt watching him that I was watching a Hall of Fame performer. I felt I was watching a really darn good wrestler who always gave it his all and was a credit to the profession. But, Hall of Fame, I think you need something a little bit more, and I think that's what he lacks.
I agree, and really was he ever given that run where they said, you're going to be the guy that's going to carry the ball, which I think is probably for Arn Anderson, and the answer to that is no. Well,
the thing is there are guys, and I think that, the obvious one is Benoit last year. And Benoit now, he was given his reign this year. But last year when he got in, he had really never been given that opportunity. But to me, what got Benoit in, and I think that everyone will agree here because everyone on this panel voted for Benoit, is that his work was so good that you can't say no. And I think Arn Anderson's work was very good, but I don't think that anyone would say Arn Anderson is the best worker I've seen in the last 15 years. I don't know that you would say it about Benoit, but we could certainly argue the point because Mike has actually said that before.
I have. I've said that at Cauliflower Alley when I introduced him a couple of years ago, and certainly the other thing that separates Benoit from an Arn Anderson or from the rest of the pack is that ability to be a top worker in so many different styles.
Yeah, that's true. And Arn Anderson did not excel in Japan when he went there. I don't think his heart was really in it. It was just a different environment. He was really a great wrestler in that Jim Crockett style of wrestling in the 80s. But, anyway, I think that we all agree, no Hall of Fame. Anderson brothers, Gene and Ole. We'll start with Brian.
Pass.
You're going to pass. Okay.
Enough of them.
Okay. Mike.
Well, certainly credited for making a style of tag team wrestling famous. For me, I just can't make a case for the Hall of Fame for them due to the limitations, especially in my mind when it comes to traveling outside of their home base, of their home area. So I'm going to say no to the Andersons.
And Mike basically just said it all for me because, again, they stuck to one area. And let's face it, tag team wrestling during the era they were strong was not a strong draw all over the country. With all due respect to them, they were good performers, particularly Ole, but were they ever going to headline in St. Louis? No. Were they ever going to headline in New York? No. Were they ever going to headline, various places we could go across like that? Solid, but again, I don't see them as Hall of Famers.
I don't think that the travel thing is much of a thing with me. I just think, first of all, we only have 10 slots. And I think that there's just a lot of people that are better.
Fill 10 slots. I like to keep it a little bit selective. I don't want to vote. I haven't made my vote yet, but I don't want to vote for 10.
Well, it's not. That's not. But the point is that if I vote for 10, they still don't make the cut. There are people who were who were world-famous wrestlers, not just... And if they were... If the Andersons were in the Carolinas, when you go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and you go, who is the local wrestling superstar? And they say Ole Anderson. I think it's a pretty, like a Jerry Lawler would be in Memphis, so to speak, or like a Ray Stevens would be in San Francisco, like a Blassie in Los Angeles. Okay. If those guys had never traveled, now they all did, but if they had never traveled, but they were the local legend, and it was a successful territory for years and years and years, I would certainly consider them. Okay.
Let me throw this question out, though. Having said that, if we were having the same discussion in 1967, for instance, and you talked about St. Louis, a lot of people say Rip Hawk was a local legend. He's not a Hall of Famer.
Well, I mean, my point is that
I know what you're saying.
No, Rick Hawk was never the guy in St. Louis. If you would
in the early 60s, off that original TV when I was growing up, Hawk and Kiniski were the two guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but I mean, in the Carolinas, in the Carolinas, it was not. Well, okay. You're saying like for a few years there, for a short period there. I mean, like for a short period, Don Manukian headlined in San Francisco, but he's not the guy. 20 years later, the only guys they mention are Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson, maybe Pepper Gomez, and Pepper Gomez for sure, actually. But I mean, the point is, in the Carolinas, who's the guy that they mention? It's Ric Flair.
Yep.
Then it's Ricky Steamboat, Roddy Piper. There's a lot of people. The Andersons are one of them. But anyway, I mean, I don't put it this way. I have people that I think were stronger. And again, with the tag team influence, from a psychologist, who wrestles today like the Andersons? I mean, people copied the British Bulldogs. People copied the Midnight Express. People tried to copy the Freebirds, but nobody ever did. Everybody tried to copy the Road Warriors. A few people may have tried to copy the Andersons, but because I saw some people who did, but not really that much.
I think really the copying of the Anderson style is more on a match-to-match basis as opposed to an overall style where you will see a team work on that particular body part for that one match.
But working on
back memories of the Andersons as opposed to them doing it as their 100% style.
Yeah, but I mean, people have worked body parts long before there were the Anderson brothers.
But the way it was done in a tag team situation, I think they're the ones that are probably credited historically mostly for that. But
I mean, like the one thing they were most famous for, which was the blocks, no one even does that anymore. Now, we're going to talk about Kurt Angle. And, Mike, you were real high on Kurt Angle. And I don't think that anyone here is going to disagree with exactly what Kurt Angle is and isn't. But the big question on Kurt Angle, obviously, is the longevity. So what's your thoughts on that?
I just think that he's been so strong in the short term that it can't be overlooked. To me, very strong voice. The package that you get with Angle as a performer, combined with among the best ever legit backgrounds in the history of the business, I think really from the start of his career, probably best described as someone who is just really a natural in professional wrestling. And the one hook that I'm going to add is, can you imagine how strong of a choice that Angle would be if his career hadn't really been tampered with, in my mind, negatively the last couple of years?
Yeah. Bryan, your thoughts on Kurt Angle?
Well, I mean, I could go over like a long list of reasons why you shouldn't have like the longevity deal and such.
That's actually the only reason I can come up with.
Well, okay, you got me there. But, I mean, he's just one of those guys where you look at him and he's like, he's so good. He got so good so fast. He's great at talking. He's a great worker, and I just can't even fathom not putting him in.
Larry.
Yeah, I definitely lean towards him too, and Mike hit something that again it's the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. But I think we do take into consideration, David, this is your brainchild, so you tell me, he has an Olympic gold medal. And you combine that with everything he did as...
That's a real interesting question because a lot of people think it shouldn't matter at all, and a lot of people think that it should matter. Well, I mean, it matters to the effect of... Put it this way, if he didn't have it, he wouldn't be in pro wrestling because no one would have recruited him. And if they had recruited him, as good as he picked it up, he still would have never gotten the original push because they would have just never given him a second. They wouldn't have given him that extra look, and it was part of his getting over, obviously.
Well, I think so. I think so.
I mean, the Olympic thing, I mean, it made him a heel. Don't you think he'd have been a babyface without it? I mean, just because of the nature of... maybe not, I don't know.
I think it has to matter also, especially when you try to make the argument of the short-term career when you take into account the years that he spent devoting himself to the amateur style. I think you have to balance that off when you try and come up with a short-term argument.
I think you have to ask, like,
I'm sorry,
you know, how far removed can something be from traditional pro wrestling for it to count in someone's Hall of Fame candidacy? Because
amateur wrestling's pretty far from our pro wrestling.
the thing I'm asking is, like, Jesse Ventura became governor, and Owen Hart died, and both of those things made them huge in the mainstream for a period of time. And do those count towards a person's candidacy?
On Jesse, I'd say because you call him a non-performer, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's helped.
Right. I don't think that you can. I don't think you can ever equate someone's fame via death towards something that you would be using as a checklist to get into a Hall of Fame. I mean, there's fame because of accomplishment. There's fame because of what maybe you've done in terms of sport or politics or entertainment. But to me, fame derived from death would never be something that you would look forward to use as a point that you would make towards putting someone in the Hall of Fame.
The one thing that Mike said just a little bit earlier that I really agreed with, because they messed around with his career, and it's probably because he has a soft ear, because he hadn't been around wrestling that much, he didn't stand up for himself quite as much.
Well, he didn't know. He
didn't know.
He didn't know, and he thought they knew best.
I wish that they'd have let him have that run on top. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that as the number one guy, he'd have done very well, and so I can't hold that against him because that wasn't his decision, and it wasn't his background to know that time. But he'd maybe been in it since they were 18 years old, and they realized, wow, I better stand up for myself or they're going to mess me around. But awful lot of good things about Kurt Angle. I mean, he by some definition, he's certainly a Hall of Famer.
I think he's a Hall of Fame guy without question. But I'm still debating just because of the idea that, put it this way, if his career was over today, I don't doubt that I would vote for him just because of what he did accomplish as far as how good he became as a pro wrestler in so many different aspects of pro wrestling. And but his career isn't over, and I don't.
We hope not.
Yeah, we hope not. Well, he's started wrestling again a week ago.
How many people have been able to make the transition into the business almost as easily as he has?
Not many.
And
you know what's funny is Jun Akiyama. Although he didn't have the overall charisma Kurt Angle had, no way. So I think that may be the difference.
Not from what I've seen in watching Jun Akiyama. I mean, certainly involved in some great matches, but in terms of even mention him in nearly in the same breath.
Yeah. Bob Backlund. Brian, you gonna pass or you gonna go?
I'm gonna pass.
Okay.
I'll go because we know what Larry's response is, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, when you look at his years as WWF champion, the box office success that he had as champion, to me, he's in. I think maybe, you talk about the lack of charisma, subpar interviews from Backlund probably, would be negatives, might hurt him, but when you factor in the long run on top, I think it was something like, 5 years as champion?
6 years.
6
years?
Yeah.
He gets my vote. Bob Backlund's a yes.
Larry.
I mean, I think Bob Backlund wasn't the greatest worker in the world, but I think there are worse workers than him in the Hall of Fame.
No, without question.
And the fact that he wasn't a good interview maybe is good. I mean, the character he was the All-American boy. He wasn't supposed to come up with witty sayings and, really drive it home with an interview. So, maybe I'm not talking about Babe Ruth, but I think I'm talking about somebody that should be in the Hall of Fame. And over the years, as Dave knows, I've both voted for and not voted for Backlund.
So, as have I.
Yeah, as I look at this, I think, I look at some of the other people, and I think Bob belongs. I
think Bob belongs for sure. I mean, I have certain reservations. I mean, the key negative on Bob is, and this is why, the reason I'm voting for him, and I mean, the key reason is because he headlined over 40 Madison Square Garden sellouts. Yep. And the only other person to do anything like that was Bruno Sammartino. And to me, that's enough. And the fact that he was WWF champion for that many years, obviously if he was that terrible, and I mean, in the last year, probably was a year too long, but if he was that terrible, they'd have switched earlier, right?
Sure. If
he was a flop. I mean, he was a success for a long, long time. He was, as WWF champion, you're one of the top 3 to 5 guys in the business, in that period, maybe, now it might even be a higher number, but in the world, and he was one of them for a lot of years. Yes, the negative on Bob Backlund is he lost the title. I don't think that there are very few people that are in the Hall of Fame that I can come up with that became such a non-entity so quickly. I mean, when it's almost like
the bottom fell. Of course, the whole business changed, too.
The business changed, okay, but the thing is that it almost was, if you're looking at the thing of, was it Vince Jr., or Vince Sr., was it Vince Sr.'s promotion and the belt, or was it Bob? And I think that if you look at what happened when Vern tried to push him, when Eddie Graham tried to push him, when, after, without the belt and without Vince, and this is after 6 years of being a legend in the Northeast and no one in the Northeast cared about him. Boy, that's a real good argument.
The ironic thing is when he came with no reputation, though, we did business with him in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But, of course, we also did business with young guys, and it kind of reminded me of something that Brody always, you can't call him Bruiser, Brody, whatever, used to always say to me, he said, St. Louis is such a hard town to come in because you always do business there. If you come in and you don't do business, it's obviously not St. Louis, it's you. You stink. It's a lot easier to go into a town where they're up and down than if you draw. Wow, it was me. I drew the crowd. And if you don't draw, you say, what'd you expect in Kansas City? Nobody can draw here anyway.
Yeah. But, to me, Bob Backlund is a definite pick. Red Bastien, which is a real interesting one. Go with Mike first.
Well, you cannot deny that Red Bastien was a trendsetter when it came to some of the high-flying aspects of wrestling. I think when you look at him as a single, he was a pretty good draw in Texas and a few other territories. One of the first people to promote Lucha Libre-style wrestling in the United States, which is another interesting little aspect of his career. But to me, so much of the career of Red Bastien that I watched, he was limited to tag team wrestling. And for the positives that I mentioned, I still can't make a strong enough case, so I'll say no on Red Bastien.
Larry.
Yeah, I have to say no, too. As much as I also enjoyed Red Bastien, especially when I was growing up, starting to learn about the business, he came through St. Louis. Loved that flying head scissors. But I also came to realize that also meant that you had to have somebody good underneath that flying head scissors so you could do those things at the top. But Red he caught a few main events here, and we had all the top guys here again through the 60s. Red wasn't above them. He was that notch below. Loved him on a card, terrific part. I'm not altogether sure he wasn't the babyface equivalent of Arn Anderson in some ways, maybe a little bit more, because as Mike said, he did innovate a lot of moves. But unfortunately, love you, Red, but can't vote for you.
Well, I got to agree on that. And great worker, great timing, but, great star, but I don't see him as a Hall of Fame star.
Yeah.
Masahiro Chono. We'll go to Bryan.
I think last year I voted yes, and it was like a combination of being a top star in New Japan for a long time, being a booker, and that was before Hogan came in, and they did good business during a time when Inoki was kind of killing everything and business was not good. So I would vote yes again.
Mike.
Well, I was always surprised that Masa Chono really didn't receive a lot more support in the Observer Hall of Fame balloting. Last year it picked up, certainly. I think more people finally recognized Masa Chono's place in the overall history as such a big draw for New Japan. You can talk about how his neck injury has certainly limited the physical aspects of his work, but I think when you look at the big picture, I voted for him last year. I'm going to stick with him again. I'll say a yes to Masahiro Chono.
Larry.
I'd say still undecided, and as you know, again, there's somebody who I voted for and not voted for, and kind of on that borderline. I agree the neck injury did hurt him. Then again, Kurt Angle had a neck injury, and we didn't hold that against him. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence, and I was hoping you guys would educate me and push me one way or the other, and I don't know if you've done it yet. Doggone it.
Well,
guys.
I would have to say that at the legends of the 90s in a promotion that was during some of that period, certainly mid-90s, they would be the hottest promotion in the world, and there were people who would argue and say that he was the biggest draw of the big three, which of course was Muto, Chono, and Hashimoto. Muto and Hashimoto already in, and I don't know that I would say he was the biggest draw of the three, but the fact that it's an arguable point is strong on his favor. Work-wise, not quite there, but as far as Hall of Fame guy, I have him as a yes. Okay, just because enough big houses. Again, and the one thing with him is that like with the Hogan match, certainly with the Misawa match, with the Ken Kobashi match, these were periods when the business was really, really down for New Japan, and they weren't going to draw. And granted, it was the combination of him and the other guy, but him and the other guy, he was a strong enough guy. He was a strong enough legend that you could still get, like Misawa and Chono was a battle of legends. And if it's a battle of legends, legends in, right? An all-time legend, and that's what the people considered it. So anyway, that's my argument for him being in. I got a question for, especially for all three of you guys, okay? And this pertains to a degree to Kurt Angle, okay? And again, it's the longevity thing, okay? Barry Windham for many years in the 80s, fantastic worker. Now, obviously, not the talker Kurt Angle was. really not the national star Kurt Angle was, so I guess maybe in that sense I'm already giving you the argument. But you know what I'm saying? In that Barry Windham was certainly from the age of 25 to 28, let's say, or 23 to 28, Barry Windham was on the verge of a Hall of Fame career. He was certainly nipping at the bud, so to speak. But I don't think that anybody would consider him for the Hall of Fame. The last several years of his career were nondescript. I mean, he didn't keep himself in condition, which I think was one of the things. But the point is, he probably, you know, you could make the argument he had as many good years, and then he went downhill. What if Kurt? Kurt goes downhill. You think you can make the same argument that he had similar drawing years to Kurt Angle? And let me just throw one other thing, and you're pretty much set up the argument that I was going to make. But here's one other thing. Kurt Angle came into the business without anyone really looking out for him in terms of booking. And really, you know, it's one of those things where I think Kurt Angle made it on his own. Can you say the same about Barry Windham? Yeah, Barry Windham had Dusty Rhodes protecting.
Can I say one
there you go.
Thing that with Kurt Angle, I see an intensity in his performance that I don't think I ever really saw with Barry Windham.
Amen.
Yeah. Barry Windham was a natural talent, but he lived on his talent. Kurt
overcame a lot of stuff. And he still is. Yeah,
and the other thing is that as much talent as Kurt had, I think that Kurt had this drive to be the best, and it may have hurt. I think it may have hurt him because it led to earlier injury. But I don't think Barry Windham ever had the drive to be the best, or else he would have stayed the best when he got right near there. But that's okay. Next week we'll go through some luchadors. Hopefully we'll get Conan on. If not, certainly all the luchador names on this I watched a lot of, and Mike has also watched a lot of. So if need be, we'll just discuss them as well. We're going to actually have a name in just a second. But one of the most intriguing names on this list is Carlos Colon. Because, you know, I'll go through the pluses and the minuses of Carlos Colon because they're all huge. Carlos Colon was not a great worker by the sense of what we would call, you know, up and down, great wrestler. He was a guy who cut his head off, got in a lot of bloody brawls. Carlos Colon was, you know, when we talk about a local legend, I would say as much in his place as a Bruno Sammartino almost. Or he is the local, maybe even more. He is the local wrestling legend in Puerto Rico. No ifs, ands, or buts. His longevity is unquestioned, and pro wrestling in Puerto Rico is Carlos Colon. Now, I mean, it's passed him by, and if he goes away tomorrow, it will go on with the rival promotion. But for years and years and years, if you know, Carlos went away, I would think that the business would probably have been cut in half, and it was a thriving business for years and years. He has got a lot going for him, and work rate, I mean, of all of the candidates, and I will say this, I have him on my list of people that I considered, and he was by far the worst worker on that list. But longevity at the top and influence on the business in his neck of the woods is huge. It can't be, you know, overstated. I think he's a very interesting candidate. Bryan, what are your thoughts on Carlos Colon?
I think there's like a Hall of Fame guy in the U.S., like just a mainstream Hall of Fame guy, and they ran their own promotion, and it was huge in the country or whatever, and then he just stayed there for too long, and it ended up collapsing and going out of business numerous times and coming back and everything like that. I would almost think that running the promotion into the ground wouldn't work too hard against him because nothing is forever and everything dies.
Look at the Sheik.
Yeah. But with all that said, I don't see him as a Hall of Fame guy.
And Mike, Carlos Colon.
You know, I've gone back and forth on Carlos Colon through the years, and I think it was a great parallel that you just made when you mentioned the Sheik and the Sheik's promotion in Detroit. The other maybe example that I think about when I think of a Carlos Colon with that great ability to draw in one area and the longevity, I think of a Jerry Lawler, kind of a similar run. But to me, on the debit list, and you pointed out a couple of these, just the drawing only in PR, the substandard work when it comes to, you know, making a Hall of Fame choice. And you also have to, and, you know, I've made arguments in the past against this, but I also think you have to take into account the involvement in the Bruiser Brody incident. And for that, I'm just going to say that the debits are too strong, and I'm going to say with a no on Colon.
Well, Larry, I don't expect you to vote for him.
Well, no, the Brody thing I'll never overcome, but on comparison. Stand Kurt Angle there, stand Carlos Colon there. Who's in the Hall of Fame?
Well, The thing with Colon, okay, and this is where he does differ from the Sheik. Just as an example, the Sheik was not a great worker either, although the Sheik was a...
When he killed his territories, they never came back either.
And Carlos had more longevity than the Sheik.
In terms of career or in terms of as a promoter? Because, I mean, he's been around forever, so I don't know.
No, I mean as far as running their own territory.
Okay.
But the negative, the Sheik went everywhere and drew everywhere. Went to Japan and drew, went to Los Angeles and drew. Didn't come to San Francisco for 10 years, was over within 30 seconds.
Well, went to New York and drew.
That's the thing. So when we talk about a guy, and Lawler went to New York and drew with Bret Hart, and Lawler, I could have gone anywhere that he had gotten, and Lawler went to Puerto Rico and drew. Lawler, anywhere where Lawler was given the interview time, he would have gotten over. It's Cologne. I don't think he would have gotten over anywhere else.
No, I don't think he would have at all.
Good point.
So those are the negatives. I mean, but if you were a Puerto Rican wrestling fan and Carlos Colon's not in the Hall of Fame, you think it's racist. And I've heard that argument.
What if somebody up here in Washington started a wrestling promotion and became huge in Washington, and the promotion lasted for 20 or 30 years, and then he ran it out of business, and he wasn't voting? What would anyone care what Washington thought about it? I mean, it's horrible to say about Puerto Rico. Like, what does Puerto Rico mean? But what does it really mean?
Well, I mean, if you were doing baseball stadium shows, I think the guy might be in.
But it was not a prime territory in any case.
Well, and it was pretty big in the 70s.
Yeah, but nobody went there because they wanted to go there a lot of times. I mean, I know some of the guys that went there. Hey, it was a quick payday. You didn't have to go there a lot. It was. Then of course a lot.
But they had. I mean, if you look at like
money
until the Brody thing, which hurt the territory as far as a lot of big stars going, although some still continue to go. But up until '88. I mean, you had, Harley Race and the Funks and Ric Flair and Brody and Abdul the Butcher and the Road Warriors. I mean, all of those guys were there, not every week, but they were in and out of there for those stadium shows all the time. And they all worked with Carlos. I mean, so it wasn't Portland wrestling, and it wasn't Kansas City wrestling either.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth through the years, but I would hesitate to say that his exclusion isn't racist. I think it's more realistic.
Yeah, it's business.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Ultimo Dragon. Ultimo Dragon is a guy who I voted in before and is coming off of a horrible year. So what?
But it's not his fault. So I'll take the lead on this. I voted for him last year. In spite of that stint with WWE, I'll vote for him again. It's just to me that the combination of what he brings to the table is way too strong. You look at his work. There's not many people that you can talk about that their work is both solid and spectacular. I can make that argument for him. And I think you can even say innovative as well.
And
combine that with the training work that he's done, the promoting, his booking, his influence on wrestling in Japan historically. To me, that overshadows any negative that you can try and sell me in terms of his singularness as a box office draw. I'm going to give it to him one more time. Ultimo Dragon is a yes.
Okay, Bryan.
I voted for Dragon like the last few years in a row for every reason that Mike said. And I remember when he was going to WWE, we were like discussing it last year that they were going to just ruin him.
And they did.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I almost wished that he didn't go. And he was used so little, but just the fact that he was never used, it was almost like at the end of the year I was like, this guy really did not help him at all. But with all that said, I think I would still vote yes for him.
Larry.
I'll probably end up not voting for him simply on the numbers game, and I kind of agree with what Bryan said there. I almost wish he hadn't gone to WWE because I knew they were going to do all those things to him. I knew it wasn't going to work, and I wish it just hadn't even happened because I recognize that he's done a lot of really good things for the business, especially in Japan. I'm probably not knowledgeable enough to be fair to the guy. It just becomes a numbers game with me.
The Japan, he's been in the changing of the course of Japanese history. And that's a hard, that's a real strong one. And I certainly have him under consideration. And probably will vote yes.
I have a hard time excluding him when so many of the negatives that everybody's mentioned are pretty much out of his hands, from the injury to the way that he was treated with the WWE. So,
but it is part of his career.
It's part.
Both.
Well, it's part of his career. It's out of his hands. Part of his career. He always had.
Well, he wasn't out of his hands. Okay, the decision to go there was
his. He had a dream of working in New York, so
he wanted to do WrestleMania. He wanted to do Madison Square Garden.
Toss him a bone on this one.
Yeah.
And say for his sake, he always wanted to work Madison Square Garden. It was always one of his dreams. He's one of the biggest wrestling fans among the wrestlers of all time, I think.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, as far as like,
so let's give him that in his late stages of his career that he got to live out that fantasy.
And the fact is the wrestlers that he started, really who started so many incredible talents.
Talking about on him, Dave. When did he actually start in the business?
Dragon would have started. I am guessing 85, 86.
He does have longevity in his favor, then, sir.
Well, he was out for several years with the elbow injury.
Well, true, yeah.
Out of 20.
Yeah, or 15. But no, I mean he's been around for a while. The one argument is was he ever the guy? And I don't know. I guess with a small promotion in Japan, yes.
Never where there was big money drawn, though.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. I'm on the bubble with him. But I mean, I certainly see the strengths. Freebirds, Bryan.
When I was young, I saw the Freebirds, so I really didn't see a whole lot of them when I really knew a whole lot about wrestling. And I've heard a lot of arguments about why they should and should not be in, and a lot of people have just really broken it down and almost overanalyzed it. But for some of these guys here, my feeling is that some guys just sort of deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, I didn't see enough of them to really know, but from what I saw, and just from also talking to other wrestlers that I've worked with and done tag stuff with, and they always mention the Freebirds, there's something about the Freebirds where it almost seems like they just should be there. But like I said, I didn't really see enough of them to know, so...
I saw too much of them, but... I got to say yes on the Freebirds, because I think that they were innovative when it came to aspects of wrestling that people... like the Andersons were very much innovative, but it was an aspect of wrestling that never really got much further than them. The Freebirds were the ones that a lot of people wanted to copy. They popularized... they were such a big deal with the Von Erichs that for a while there, that six-man tag team championship in Dallas was one of the best drawing championships in the whole business except for the world title. And, that's the only time in history you could say that. And it wasn't just, they were in Dallas. They were a big deal on the Superstation. They were a big deal, not a huge deal in Memphis, but when they first came down with the music, that was something of that opened a lot of people's eyes in Memphis and helped change Memphis. Mid-South goes without saying what they did there. It was incredible. And Dallas, after that, not a whole lot. And it wasn't that many years, but I think that I got to go with just from I remember the reaction to them when I saw them and how influential I felt they were in the business and still do when I look back. And so I got to go with the yes. Obviously, individually, Terry Gordy is close to a Hall of Famer, but I would say not quite there. Michael Hayes is a wrestler, and even a talker on his own, no, and Buddy Roberts, no, but I think as a group they are. So that's Larry.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the bubble, and you made some very good arguments for them there. They're like shooting stars. They had just an incredibly brilliant period. I think they did have more of an influence on tag team wrestling than a team like the Andersons did. Terry ran into some of the problems of the era that probably kept him from being a Hall of Famer, and I agree with you. He's very, very close to it. Remember Brody talking about we were going to bring him in when I was running opposition. Brody says, brother, if I work with Gordy, they're going to see 2 300-pounders up in the air, and they're not going to ever believe they've seen something like that again. But I'm on the bubble with them. I kind of lean towards it. I know I've been not real strong on tag teams, once again, because of the area where I was brought up on. Tag teams were not a be-all and end-all. It was a singles-man business. But I recognize the Freebirds might be that one little bit different category. So I'm on the bubble, but I'm leaning towards them.
Real quick, Larry, plug the DVDs.
Well, the DVDs, Classic St. Louis Wrestling, just signed a deal with High Spots today. The DVD should be available starting sometime right after Labor Day. Have 8 volumes completed. We'll end up with 10. I might have enough to do an 11th. The 10th one will be Sam Muchnick's farewell show, raw footage from the Checkerdome January 1st, 1982, and some of the angles leading up to it. Been very happy with it, and I'll throw in a plug for Ric Flair here. I finally, and Dave, you know this, I agonize about doing anything that makes Vince McMahon money. But I actually bought the book. And when I'm glad I did. I thought Rick did a tremendous job in the book. And reading it, I really could kiss him a couple times because he brought up things that I'll be talking about as tied into St. Louis and also had at least some minor effect on his career. He's really going to make me toughen up a couple parts about some things that I saw in there, and it's a good book.
Okay, well, we've talked enough about Ric Flair's book, and I have a feeling over the next...
I'll stop, I'm sorry.
We're going to talk a lot about Ric Flair's book in the future, too, because it's turned into... Larry, now, Mike, you have not read the book, right?
No, I have not. It's supposedly being mailed to me as a present this week.
Okay.
So I'm going to get it soon.
Okay, I mean, to me...
I have read a couple of chapters because I do have to tell you that it's, without question, popular book in the locker room in TNA in the past 3 weeks.
I can imagine. I think, and Larry, I want your thoughts about this one. I think that it's really sad that book, that so much of the focus of that book has come on about 3 or 4 of the pages when it has to do with Mick Foley and Bret Hart, both of which I
couldn't agree with you more.
But I think that it's become so unfortunate. I think that, Vince McMahon and to an extent Flair, their idea of promoting it by harping on that, I think it's done a tremendous disservice to the book.
The book as a whole has so much more to offer, and from the fact that he's telling things about himself that he really has the courage and the guts to go out there and talk in public about, and just some of the other parts of the business that get brought up. Yeah, as I went through it, I'm looking for the parts with Hart and with Foley, and I'm thinking, this is such a minor part. I mean, it's not that big a deal, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think it does a real disservice to the book.
Brian, what's your thoughts so far?
I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting for it as well.
Okay. We are going to go to Don Fry, and Brian, I'll start with you.
I would vote yes. Don Fry was a great fighter, really tough man. He didn't really do a lot of interviews in UFC, but the interviews I heard, and even like the interviews on this show, really funny guy. When he went to pro wrestling, good pro wrestler, drew some big houses. I know it was with Inoki, and it was Inoki's retirement, but still has to count for something. And when I just think of UFC and MMA, if someone were asking about a Hall of Fame and they said Don Fry,
when it comes to MMA, I mean, there's no question he's a first ballot pick. I mean, he's just a legend. He's a legend in that business.
But the fact that he's on this ballot because of what he's done in pro wrestling and MMA.
Yeah. Because
I really can't see you putting him on this ballot only for the pro wrestling stuff.
Sure. Well, obviously, the key make or break is, and to me, that's why it's yes. And I mean, if you look at his matches like the Shamrock match and the Takayama match, it's one of those things. He is just. And again, part of this also is being around fighters, and if you're around fighters, Don Fry is a legend, and not even because he's the best fighter, because he's not, but he's just
Don Fry.
He's Don Fry, and he's the toughest man on earth. And I mean, that's just their feeling on him. I mean, it's like I have been in a room with 15 fighters, and I mean, it's just like they are in awe of Don Fry. And not that some of them in that room couldn't have beat him. They're just in awe of him because he's Don Fry, because of his charisma, because of his money-making ability. And it's really hard, but when you talk about the it factor, in pro wrestling, I mean, Don Fry has it. And to me, if you throw everything together, I mean, I've got him on my list for sure. Mike.
I was really surprised by the strong support that he received last year, his first year on the ballot. Thinking this thing through, I think when you combine the mixed martial arts, New Japan career, you can really make a solid case for him. I loved the intense pro wrestling style, the box office results when he was with Pride. I guess it was Shamrock and Takayama matches.
Well, there were a lot of them,
just off the charts among others.
And those were his famous matches as far as just wars.
Yep, ability to compete at less than 100%. There's just a lot of things that I'm going to make the case for Don Fry and say yes.
One of the things that there's something. I don't know if this is even a valid point, but and I'm going to say this for something with Don Fry and also having to do with Kurt Angle. When Kurt Angle wrestled Brock Lesnar in the match at WrestleMania in Seattle, and I watched that match, it really and Kurt Angle should not have done that match. And I didn't want him to do that match, but watching him do that match and watching how good a match it was in the condition he was, it's hard to not to say that, you know, it's like there are certain things that they're not like box office, and they're not like wins and losses, and they're not, but there's certain things that guys do that make them special, and that was a moment for Kurt Angle, that WrestleMania, I think.
It's that intangible that separates him from the other guys.
And Don Frye, after tearing his quad, now, you know, I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as Triple H, but he tore his quad in a match with Scott Norton, and then I think it was 10 days later he fought Gilbert Ivell, who was an incredible striker, and, you know, just the fact that he got in the ring and had a great match.
And didn't he have a neck injury at that time, too, in addition to the torn quad?
Well, yeah, he would have, but he probably kept that quiet. But, yeah, he absolutely would have had a neck injury. But he's had a bad neck for years anyway. But, I mean, the whole thing, there's, you know, everyone goes in hurt, but you go in with a torn quad in a match where, you know, you don't have the strength to take the guy down, and he's a great striker, and your only offense theoretically against him is a takedown, and you don't say, hey, you know, let's cancel the fight for a couple months. There's something to be said for that. And I'm not even saying it's wise, but there's, you know, that's what people say. You know, Don Frye is, like I said, Don Frye is a legend among the fighters. You know, probably, you know, kind of like maybe like, you know, Mike will understand this, and then Larry too. You know, like Ray Stevens among the wrestlers. You talk to the wrestlers, and they, you know, Ray Stevens is probably a much bigger deal among the wrestlers than among wrestling fans. And because he's Ray Stevens, I don't know, but I think Don Frye kind of has that same type of a thing going with him. Larry.
He's a legitimate tough guy. I have voted for him. I kind of was wavering against him this year, and you're reminding me all the reasons I voted for him. I'm thinking, boy, if it comes down to a numbers game and I have to pick either Don Frye or I couldn't be picking two more different choices to make there. Boy, tough guys count, and then I've been around enough of them in the business, whether it was Luthez or Brody or any of those guys, or Race or anybody talking about tough people. Tough not to vote for Frye. Geez, he's the goods. He's the real deal.
Yeah. Funaki. Bryan, you want to start on Masakatsu Funaki?
Yeah, Funaki was like, I see him as one of the pioneers of MMA, and I never really saw a lot of him, but, you know, just from looking at his fight record, I mean, he beat some good guys in his day, and he was one of those guys that, you know, because of him, MMA really exploded and became what it is today, so I would probably vote yes.
Wow. Okay. Mike.
Well, you know, I agree in terms of the background that you laid out, Bryan. After pro wrestling, UWF, Pancras certainly pioneer in terms of Japan. Important historic figure, but for me, he fell victim to the numbers game, and I'm a no on Funaki.
Larry, do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm probably not knowledgeable enough about him to really know. He would be a no for me, but I think it's as much lack of really good knowledge on him. I'd have to agree with Mike.
I'm going to vote no on him. This is my thoughts on Funaki. He's very important historically because he was a professional wrestler who started Pancras with Ken Shamrock and Minoru Suzuki, and of the three, worldwide Ken Shamrock is actually the most important of the three, by far. But Funaki would be more important in Japan. Mixed martial arts got real big in Japan, but it didn't explode under him. My thought on Funaki, you know, when Funaki fought Rickson Gracie and lost, if he'd won that fight, I think he would have been a Hall of Famer for sure. Certainly in Japan, I don't think that anyone would have denied it had he beaten Rickson Gracie. But in the biggest fight, he lost, and it was not a good performance, and I don't know that he beats the door down with everything else. So anyway, my point is that I'm voting no on him. And I know a lot of people in Japan are high on him, and a lot of people in Japan are not high on him. It's a very interesting candidate, because to me, I think Sakuraba is more important, and it's a numbers game, and going to Pepper Gomez, and I have seen more Pepper Gomez than anybody on the panel, and I will say no, and I'm not even going to discuss it other than the idea of, I mean, he had some very nice runs, and in this area, he is something of the local wrestling legend, you know, but just not good enough. Not at the Hall of Fame level. I don't see it. Mike.
Yeah, you know, the great bio that you did in the Observer, the background information and the like in the obit just really brought back the memories of Pepper Gomez drawing power in Texas and in Northern California. But then my recollection of his working ability which really I started to see him in the mid to late 1960s on. Really, it precludes me from even considering him at the Hall of Fame level, so that's a no as well.
Okay, Larry.
Same with me. I'd seen some of his early stuff from Texas at one point, but then I was more used to seeing him late 60s, early 70s, and he was not a Hall of Famer at that point. On the other hand, he probably was one of those good, solid parts of the puzzle that he had a lot of wrestlers like him that really just made that middle area of cards so good or so experienced, but not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, in fact, the thing I think with Gomez is if Gomez is a Hall of Famer, there are just so many other guys at that level.
Well, Arn Anderson's in them too.
Yeah, Arn Anderson, I would rate him.
Red Bastien certainly in.
I would rate Red Bastien ahead of Pepper Gomez too.
I would too.
Okay, Bryan, any thoughts on Pepper Gomez?
Pass.
Okay, Gordman and Goliath. Well, we're going to start with Mike because Mike knows Gordman and Goliath better than almost anyone. Although I saw, I grew up watching Gordman and Goliath as well. Mike, what's your thoughts?
Well, I thought we'd probably hold them off to next week for the Lucha Libre aspect, but I'll jump in anyway and say that.
Well, I think that they're going to get in more on Los Angeles
based than Mexico based.
Yeah, because Goliath was something of a star in Mexico, but far more in the United States. And Gordman again. I mean, their big fame was Texas and California, and especially Southern California.
Great longevity in California. It both right near the top and just for so many years, and certainly one of the greatest tag teams I've seen, and certain in terms of innovation and bringing a style to the United States that had not been seen before. Very, very strong. I considered them, but I just could not put Gordman and Goliath in the Hall of Fame. I just couldn't pull the trigger on it, but boy, it's something I definitely gave a lot of thought to for all the years that they drew so well in California.
To me, again, seeing them a lot, they were an excellent tag team. But to me, if I compare them with the Midnight Express as a tag team, I would go with the Midnight Express, and I've yet to vote for the Midnight Express, although I've considered them and considered them this year as well as far as Midnight Express. And, again, Gordman and Goliath I see as very, they're absolutely totally different from the Andersons, but at the same time very similar in that the Andersons were the legendary tag team in the Carolinas. Gordman and Goliath would have been the legendary tag team in California during the same basic period. They both had innovative styles and everything like that, but just, when I got 10 picks, they're not making it. Larry, your thoughts on, you saw Gordman and Goliath in St. Louis.
Yeah, same thing, too. I had the misfortune of seeing them when they made their little sojourn to Kansas City territory, and when they actually came to St. Louis, I think they were pretty much disinterested, but being in Kansas City for a couple of weeks would do that to some wrestlers, and they probably had culture shock. But I know they were
in Kansas City, they would just be, out of it.
Oh, yeah, they showed
fish out of water
at that point. Which isn't really fair to them because I know they did a lot of good things, but you kind of made me verify my vote of good team, but no, not quite.
Okay, we're going to start with Bryan for Eddie Guerrero because I know Bryan has thought a lot about Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero is a very interesting shrine. Your thoughts?
I think that Eddie was a great worker in the lucha style. He was a great worker in the U.S. style. He was a believable cruiserweight, a believable heavyweight. He's had great matches for over a decade. And even over the last year, Eddie was like a guy who could move the numbers on TV just because of his popularity among Hispanics at a time when nothing was moving numbers really on TV. And even looking at the Great American Bash or wherever the pay-per-view was that I thought would draw about 10 buys, did 240,000, and I'm not giving that to Bradshaw. I think that I would consider Eddie Guerrero a Hall of Famer.
Larry.
Well, I can't pull the trigger yet. I'm not saying down the road. He's done an awful lot of good things. I guess I just hesitate. I'm not quite sure why they threw him up there, although I agree certainly that buy rate was a pleasant surprise from a Guerrero standpoint. I'm sure from Vince's standpoint as well. He's done an awful lot of good things. I'm close. He's one of my question marks. But probably not yet, and that's, as Mike said, I'm maybe a little bit more bullheaded on that one. I want to keep it a little bit selective. I don't want to all of a sudden pick 4 guys who are on top of WWE. They can't all be Hall of Famers, can they? Or can they? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think they can. I don't think they.
I mean, when there's only one promotion, and
well, that's also very.
It's only 4 guys from an era, if you know what I'm saying. And I mean, I'm not saying that there should be that definitely the top 4 guys in WWE should be in if they're good enough to be in. I mean, it's.
Well, he's sitting there with a question mark yet. I'll keep it open. I'll probably be pulling the trigger on my voting on the night of August 4th.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to Eddie Guerrero, I'm leaning towards agreeing with Larry over Bryan, and I'm hoping that I eventually will be able to say yes for Eddie Guerrero in the Hall of Fame, possibly even anticipating that I will eventually. I just don't think so in 2004. A lot of ups and downs career-wise. Maybe for me, just waiting for a little bit more time on top as the draw, as the guy before I can pull the trigger.
I wish they'd have kept the belt on him a little bit longer.
In a sense, I do too.
Me too.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Mike. As far as it's a real close because wrestling wise, in the ring, I mean,
slam dunk in the ring.
He's a slam dunk in the ring. He's got charisma, but it's only come out in the last couple of years.
Totally different than in WCW, and that's from somebody that held the microphone for him before.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of different styles. You know, he's done the Lucha style well, the Japan style well, the U.S. style well.
Which gives him longevity.
I'm leaning towards yes, but
You're leaning towards yes in 2004?
I'm leaning. He's.
I could totally see you guys arguing about that because I could. Like if somebody
he's on my like those 7 people that are for the last 3 spots. I mean he's right there on it. I don't know how it's all going to shake down still, but
I could see voting no this year.
That to me is probably the biggest thing. God, I want to vote him, but I just can't do it this year.
Yeah, I mean, like in my brain, I have it that I will certainly be voting for Eddie Guerrero when his career is over, and yet if we're so strong on Kurt, Eddie's had done more styles. Eddie's. You know what I'm saying? Eddie, in a sense, has probably, at least in the last year, drawn more people. I mean, Kurt was around on top during the good period, and Eddie was in the middle. Work-wise, in some ways, Eddie's better. I mean, Kurt certainly has consistency on Eddie, because Eddie's not the most consistent wrestler, and he certainly had his down periods.
I hope they don't bury him once he doesn't have the belt, and that affects him in the ring, and that would affect other people's thinking down the road.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was also a guy that made his way to the top in spite of a lot of things. Like he's not really the kind of guy that Vince sees as a guy. Oh, I'm going to push him to the moon.
No, I'll tell you when he won the title at 5'7" and 215 pounds or whatever he is. That's a real breakthrough. I mean, even though Benoit got it, and Benoit isn't much bigger, Benoit is bigger than Eddie, and
bigger, got a thicker look.
Thicker look and taller. I mean, Eddie's, I don't know if he's wearing lifts or something. Eddie's a short guy. I mean, I think, but for Vince McMahon to go with a guy like that, and again, Benoit was given the title almost as like what's called meritorious service, and just as a guy, to add to Triple H's notches on his belt. You know what I'm saying? Eddie was given the championship because the fans forced the hand, which is something very different. And even though they took it from him quicker than they originally were going to, he accomplished something. I'm leaning towards him a little bit. Anyway, Triple H. I'm going to start with Larry on Triple H because we already know where Bryan stands.
Yeah, I keep. Geez, I want to do this a first ballot type. Is he Babe Ruth? Is he a first ballot type? If he divorces Stephanie tomorrow, will he still be in the main event? That's not fair to him. He's proven to be a terrific worker. He's had some injury problems at some point. I guess I'm looking at him and Guerrero, and I'm saying, oh, man, Guerrero in some ways has earned it more. He's put more time in. He's had more hard times to fight through.
But some of the hard times were his own doing.
Some of the hard times were his own doing, so I'm probably leaning towards yes on Triple H and no on Guerrero. And I'd probably go with Triple H. And once again, I could see, as Mike had talked about, too, well, 1, 2, 3 more years down the road, yeah, sure. I'd surely do it for them if he's still on top and they're still doing business. And I guess, again, it's not fair. Great longevity in the year 2004 or going into 2005, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, well, in some ways his longevity is amazing only because there's only one company. But then again, he did burn out, and because of who he was, he got to stay on top anyway.
He got another run at it, and then he got energized by having a lot of youth and a legend around him.
Yeah, that's helped him. That's helped him a lot.
Now, of course, is part of wrestling fame what you do with your brain and how you manipulate your career and those people around you.
Well, if that is, then he's in because nobody he's he's going to run the company, and he half is now.
He's Carlos Colon.
Well, but a much bigger company and a much better worker.
Smart aleck, I apologize.
Yeah. Mike,
if you overlook the ability to be manipulative politically in the business, then you're overlooking some of the most important aspects of every big-name wrestler. And if you think of Hulk Hogan and
even
his ability to do that, I mean, I don't think you can overlook that. I'm not saying that that's something that you put right up there as the top of the list.
No, but even Ric Flair and Lou Thez and let's face it, Dory Funk Sr. for Dory Funk Jr. You know, I mean,
Eddie Graham for Jack Briscoe.
Yeah, you know, so it's
oftentimes to me maybe the most overlooked aspect of a lot of things in the business when people talk and rate wrestlers.
Ago, when they had the ceremony for Brody, and there was only a few of the wrestling people there, including John Studd and Stan Hansen, and everybody got up and made a little speech about Brody. John Studd said the smartest thing about it all: the toughest fights in this business are never in the ring; they're always behind closed doors.
Well, he's played it incredible. I mean, that's all you can say.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, okay,
go ahead.
Triple H, just to wrap it up, I'm going to say, factor in that he was the top heel in the best ever money drawing era of the business. Injuries have hurt him in recent years in terms of his in-ring. Still too dominant of a figure to ignore or overlook. He's a first ballot yes for me.
I see it the same way. I see him as one of the strongest guys on this ballot. And like if you say someone who deserves a first ballot, I say yes, because I think that you go back, I mean, you know, all of the title runs, yeah, he manipulated his way through it, but, I mean, you're talking about a guy with incredible longevity, considering it's only one promotion. Again, I've said why, you know, one of the reasons why is because of the position he's in, but even look at him this year. I mean, you know, the matches with Michaels, the three-ways with Benoit, Shelton Benjamin, it's not like we don't see him having some really good, important matches, and that isn't, you know, I mean, yeah, he's managed to work with good people, but I mean, he's dominant. Hey, let's face it, he's the number one guy in the business today on a worldwide basis. You know, I mean, you go to Japan, he can draw. You go to Australia, he can draw. It's part of the package with WWE, but he's the number one guy and with the number one company. And when is the number one guy in the number one company not in, right?
Very good point.
We're going to go to Gran Hamada, and I'm going to start out by saying, as someone who has voted for him in the past, that time has not been kind to him, and I think that part of it also is just the numbers game as more and more people get eligible. I didn't even think about him, and work-wise, I mean, as far as, you know, so many years and with styles changing and still maintaining being a great worker until, you know, his early 50s, although now I wouldn't say he's still a great worker. You know, he deserves, and I mean, he's come very close. He's come within a couple of ballots of making it on a couple of the years, but I didn't even consider him this year, and I voted for him in the past. So anyway, I don't know. What do you, Bryan? Any thoughts on that?
Actually, it's funny because that was almost the exact speech that I was going to give, but it's the same thing because, like, in the past, my argument to simplify it was that always he's really old and really great, but I think that now, you know, things are changing so much that I think that there are going to be a lot of guys that are 50 that are still really great. And
I don't think so. But
well, if they live, but don't get broken down and everything. But I just think that, like, 40 now is not what it used to be, and I think there's going to be more guys who are surprisingly good at 50 in the future. So maybe not indie guys, but so I would vote no.
Real quick, Mike.
Wow, I had to disagree with about the guys being great in terms of longevity, but that's another subject for another day. Gran Hamada's totals in terms of his voting really dropped off. Longevity is the plus. No box office success really to me is a minus. Solid worker, but I hadn't voted for him in the past, and I'm not going to this year. And
Larry, really quick.
Yeah, I'll go with the no and say, you know, the list we have here, that's some really good people for Hall of Fame candidates.
Yeah. We're going to come back next week and go through a lot more. But anyway, this was a really fun hour, and we got through almost as many as I expected the first week.
It'll only take us about 4 more weeks.
Anyway, we'll see everybody back here next week, and we're going to go through the second half of the list.